everybody. Welcome to both Maya and Jennylyn's world, our social media and all that good stuff. Before we get started with my friend Maya and myself, just so you guys know, you guys can catch me at jennylynchung.com. And that's where you can connect with me, one-on-one sessions, look at all my products, my beautiful skincare and jewelry and my ebooks and all that good stuff is at jennylynchung.com. Maya, you want to let them know where just a few different places they can get you?
Yeah, my world is at mayaakiva.com. That's my name. It's still in progress, so not all the information will be there. So the best place to find out about anything that I do is on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for at @mayaakiva and I will show up. There's only 2 of us in all the United States with that name. It's very good for social media.
That's, you know what? There's only one, there's no Jennylyn Chung in the whole world.
Then you won the lottery of social media.
There you go. There's a Jennylyn Mercado, which is like, she's like an actress or something like that. But so we will put the information, guys, in the description box below because, yeah, this is going to be really, I think, encouraging. And people, if you want to work with Maya, you can get in touch with her. So guys, what we're going to talk about today is a whole bunch of things, but a lot about mental health and also the dark side of both Maya and I. We were talking before, you know, I come off a little bit more sunny than the average girl, a little bit more of a sunny disposition, but I have a dark side too, just like everyone else. And I've been through my own traumas and things that I've overcome. So, and then with Maya, she's going to share about that. So we're going to just kind of talk about all those types of things. Maybe, who knows, maybe a little bit of spirituality will come into it and things like that. But I guess we could start, Maya, where maybe you could share with everybody from a personal perspective, your journey of becoming the woman you are today, your mental health journey.
Yeah, I mean, oh my God, do you have 5 hours?
I know, right? I'm like,
no.
God,
I'll give you the short version. Yeah, so I'm, before you try to Google where I'm from, let me tell you so you can understand my accent. I'm originally from Israel. I was born and raised. I moved to the United States when I was 24. Actually did not, it's kind of like I always say that all of my trauma happened until I moved here, and then I moved here to heal all this trauma. I don't know why, which is why I think I ended up in LA. LA is a very healing spiritual town, even though a lot of people don't know it. I really wanted to go to New York and it didn't work out, and in retrospect I can see why. No offense to New York, I love New York, it's my #1 favorite place in the whole world, but it is not a healing town. It's a productive town, you know, like do. So I think this is part of why I ended up in LA. Also, like, it was far enough away from my families that nobody would come to visit. And New York is a very visible town by Israelis, and I needed to get away to do a lot of healing. So I moved here. I moved here to be in the entertainment industry. And I tried that, and I had like mediocre success and did some writing and some comedy stuff. And then had a very, very big emotional breakdown that led me to the only time in my life that I even thought about suicide. I didn't do anything, but that was like the first time I've ever consciously thought about it, and it led me to 12-step programs and really started, I think, my healing journey. Excuse me. I remember that night very clearly. I was like, okay, I want to commit suicide about something I don't even care about. I'm like, there is something off about that. There was a light involved that went on. And the next day I was in my therapist's office. And the next day after that, I was in a 12-step program. And I started a journey of healing. Oh my God, it is like never ending. I don't know, Jennylyn, how is it for you? But it's like peeling an onion. It's just like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get to the center of it. But whenever one layer is peeled of healing, there's another layer and another layer, and another layer. And, it started with addiction, depression, negative beliefs, negative self-talk. Like, it's all layers that I healed slowly. And now in the past few years, I hit the layer of trauma. And that's like a whole other ball game. That's a very thick layer of the onion that I'm still working through. But it's a very, very important layer that I think will change the foundation of my life and kind of like how I experience life. What I do in my professional life is I just fell into taking those, I'm attracted to, and I'm able to create, merging those two areas of my life, which is creativity and mental health. And for some reason, I like it. I know how to do it. It works out. And I have a company that is called Mental Health Plus Creativity Content and Programs, where I create content and programs that all has to do with creativity and mental health. For example, I created a mental health creative writing curriculum that I facilitate and other people facilitate in treatment centers for mental health and addiction. I have a podcast, a mental health creative podcast, where I interview my feelings every episode and kind of get their point of view, because apparently they have a point of view different than us, by the way. So this is kind of like my journey and what I do, and hopefully we'll get more into specific details about that. The podcast is called Interview with Myself, and please subscribe. It's awesome. And very insightful. What about you, Jennylyn? I would love to hear about your journey, because I don't think I know bits and pieces of it.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that was beautiful. I'd love for us to maybe talk about our experience in the 12 steps. That would be really interesting. So as a child, I had experienced many traumas before I was even like 6. I saw a guy burn alive. I had been sexually abused, and I had been, you know, my parents are wonderful people, but they put me in daycare, as many kids do, and go. And for me, it was very traumatic. I felt really abandoned. And I struggled with feelings of being abandoned my whole life. And I'm still healing that from that simple thing. And I know I used to be a preschool teacher. Some kids love being dropped off, playing with their friends all day. For whatever reason, for me, it was a terrible trauma. I don't know why. I wanted my mom. I wanted my mom 24/7. So, those were just a few of the things I had experienced before I was even 5 or 6. And I was what I would describe is a melancholy child, growing up. I had some good moments, and I was talented, and I had friends, and there were aspects of life I really enjoyed, but there was always sort of this undertone of sadness that I felt, unworthiness, just not fitting in, not feeling lonely, all of these sorts of things. And I developed an eating disorder by the time I was 14. Now, this eating disorder was a rampant part of my life because I was a natural curvy girl. So one of the problems is there's a stigma that you can't be curvy and have an eating disorder. So every time you go into the doctor, your eating disorder is affirmed more, right? You're thick, you're curvy, you're whatever. You need to lose weight. Society constantly told me that. No longer. Nowadays, my shape is all the rage, and I've been offered modeling contracts because of my shape. But things have really changed. It wasn't like that before. The ethnic curvy girl was not on the front page of the magazines the way she is now. So growing up, I felt inadequate physically, and so in every way, I just didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel lovable. And eventually I entered the 12 steps, Overeaters Anonymous, which I no longer believe. I hold kind of out of the box views of eating disorders. I believe that the main cause of an eating disorder is restriction. So meaning, like, you could be in a bigger body and your body is holding on to that bloating, that water weight, the extra fat, the inflammation, because you're starving. So my theory is that the bigger someone is, the more they've probably starved and restricted their body. And I can't tell you how many naturally thin women I've met when I ask them, have you ever been on a diet? Do you restrict? Do you not eat chocolate? And I would say, the majority of the time, if I meet an overwhelming majority of the time, if I meet a naturally slender woman, she will tell me she eats anything she wants, wherever she wants, and always has. And then when I meet a woman in a bigger body, she can tell you a long, long history of diets, restrictions, shame from society, shame from her family, etc. So I hold sort of out of the box views about body restricting, dieting, etc. But ultimately, I hold to the view that people should eat in abundance, meaning just eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full, and eat everything in moderation and don't cut any food groups out. And that's what I've been doing for several years now. But recovering from an eating disorder, the 12 steps was, in some ways, it's not in alignment with what I believe, but many things were wonderful about it. Things like just, surrendering to God, and things like going back through your past and your trauma and the things you're ashamed of, and finding a way to heal them and own them. And if you need to make apologies to feel better, go ahead and do that. If you need to get on the phone to feel better. So, I've really outgrown the 12 steps. It's not something I would recommend now, but at the time, 10, 15, 20 years ago, the 12 steps were pretty progressive and pretty helpful. So that was my experience with that. So I thought I had a food addiction, but I don't have a food addiction. I just needed to make sure I was eating enough for my body and just let my body be in its natural position. But that was a huge amount of trauma for me. And so my body is something I'm still becoming acquainted with to this day. I'm still learning to love my body, to be comfortable with my body, like not just in clothes, but without clothes, and in a bathing suit, and not just alone, but with my potential future husband, like feeling that comfortability within myself is, like you said, it's like an orange or an onion, and you're just peeling back the layers, because I think the ultimate goal is to absolutely love yourself, from inside to out, outside to in, and being totally confident and comfortable in whatever skin you are, and having a very relaxed relationship with your body. So that was that. And then I ended up continuing on in my path, and something that was really challenging for me was being an artist and not knowing how I was going to make money. I had these gifts and talents. I could sing. I loved people. I could work in groups. I could create cool things. Like, I was a pretty decent communicator and teacher. But, when I hit my 30s and I got divorced, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to make it. I don't know how I'm going to provide for myself, because I don't really have any, quote unquote, well, there was nothing else I really wanted to do. There was nothing practical I wanted to do. Everything I wanted to do was creative and fun. So I ended up going on a journey for the last 10 years of learning how to trust in God and the universe, learning how to build, I guess what you call was the business, whatever. Okay. I don't know what to call myself. I don't know if you feel that way. Sometimes I'm a singer. I guess I'm an entrepreneur. I guess I'm a teacher. I don't know what I am anymore, but somehow, some way.
It's Jennylyn Chung Inc.
I really don't know what to say. And all I know is that over the past 10 years, I've continually followed my joy and my bliss. And it didn't always make sense. There's projects I have my hands in right now that make no sense. I don't even know why I'm doing them. And that's been my life. I just kept doing things that were fun as they presented themselves. I kept taking the path of least resistance. Okay, this seemed to make sense. And one thing leads to the next. And before you know it, I don't know. I guess I could say I'm living a life that I'm proud of, and I've been able to be financially taken care of from soup to nuts. All my needs and most of my wants have been met. And the healing that I've done is exactly what you would say. I do feel very healed. I really do. But like, just when I get a little cocky, I'll get knocked out for like a week, and I'll be, have to like recluse and pray a lot and cry a lot and grieve about things and journal. And then, I'll not pull myself out of it, but feel released emotionally. And then I can kind of go back to, I guess you could call my happy place. I think as a child and as a 20 something, my general mood was kind of melancholy and low value and not worthy. And now as I've gone into my 30s and now into my 40s, I would say my general mood is pretty good, pretty joyful, and pretty happy, with momentary times of grieving and, shame comes up and just emotions you have to deal with. Um, so, I mean, in general, I would say I'm a pretty happy person these days, which caught me by surprise because that was not my MO. And I found the quickest way to joy for me is, I guess, a couple key things. Number one, don't listen to what people say. Like, be unbothered. Do what you want to do. Do what brings you joy. Literally the cliche phrase, follow your bliss. It might not make sense. I couldn't emphasize it again. Half the things I have my hands in right now, I don't even know why I'm doing them. But somehow, some way, it all turns out okay. It's very weird how the universe and God sort of pulls it all together for you. There's a greater plan and agenda going on. And the second thing I would say that is really key that I've done is I know how to feel emotions to the deepest, pushing them away, no hiding. Like literally, if that means sitting in my room all day and crying, I can go into the nucleus of the feeling and feel it fully in every way and embrace it and even love it, strangely, love the feeling of grief or the feeling of anger or feeling of shame. And I find, I don't know about you, Maya, but when I do that, it lifts supernaturally. Like it's like a feeling that almost sort of kind of comes, it's here, I feel it, and then it sort of slips away. And that's been my experience. So those are my 2 tips for joy. It's like, do you, boo, follow your bliss. Like, don't be afraid, because you're never going to be happy living the life everybody else wants you to live and that society wants you to live. And the second thing I would say is feel your emotions fully. Cry as often as you need to in life, and kind of baby yourself emotionally and allow them to pass through so that we can return to our general state as humans, which my opinion is one of well-being, one of joy.
Thank you for sharing that. I've never heard you tell that from that point of view. And it's so funny as you speaking, I'm kind of like, listening and reflecting, and we are the complete opposite in our response to mental health, which is really, really funny, which explains why, like, I look at your life and I go like, wow, how did she manage that? Because I know we have the very similar like traumas and talents and all of that, but she gets an opposite reaction than me. And I was like, you know how it is. You always kind of look at the other person going like, how did they do that? And now that explains it to me. We have a completely different reaction to that. So, and I love your reaction, by the way. I think that's great. My knee-jerk reaction to feelings, emotions, to difficult thing is the opposite than you. A little bit, again, a few just details about me. I had a birth trauma, a very severe birth trauma when I was born. And I had to be in an incubator for 2 months, and I was never given to my mother. So right off the bat, I started with neurologically nervous system, like problems and trauma. Okay. That there's nothing I can do about it. There is, it's very subconscious. It's not something I can heal like on a conscious level. So right there, I'm like, there was a problem. And then I was raised by wonderful people, but emotionally unavailable. I was given everything I ever wanted externally, but they were both a daughter and a son of Holocaust survivors. So they experienced their own trauma by being raised by people who did not deal with their trauma, and they chose to not deal with their trauma, and then they raised me and my brother and sister. So it's kind of like a continuous kind of like thing, and I think that that affected the way they raised me, and their being emotionally unavailable. Now we're finding out, I do a lot of studying about trauma. And by the way, I'm not a therapist. This is like all opinion zero, or on my own and my own experience. Is we're finding out now that emotionally unavailable parents is just as traumatic as sexual abuse, which is, by the way, very traumatic. I'm not demonizing at all. But that it creates also an effect of trauma in a child that gets him or her to experience, very unhealthy coping mechanism to able to survive childhood. So basically, in order to survive my childhood, and I don't know if you had a similar experience, I had to like not be there emotionally, mentally, emotionally. I had to not be there in order to survive. And this is how I learned. This is my mechanism that I learned how to deal with life. I was a very happy kid, which is so funny. Like I stole all the VHSs from my parents' home so I can look at my childhood. You know what I mean? Like kind of like look at videos and be like, oh, I wonder, I don't remember how I was. I mean, now it seems like I had a horrible childhood, but I don't remember it horrible. And looking at those videos, I was a very happy kid. So I think that it was all like denial, which is how I learned I'm an amazingly functional, mentally ill person. You would not know anything is going on. I can, yeah, which is a cursing and a blessing at the same time. So when you say this is how you deal with mental illness or mental health, even I wouldn't call it mental illness, mental health in your life, I go the other way because this is what I learned. I learned that when you have a feeling, you shut down, like danger. Feelings equal danger, which is very common to addiction. And so it's very hard for me to feel feelings and go to the place and definitely feel feelings that are triggering, meaning feelings that in my childhood were danger. They're not dangerous as an adult because feelings are not dangerous as we experience them as an adult, but as a kid, your perception is very different. And there's a lot of things that as an adult will be just another day will be considered danger to a kid in a kid's eyes. So grief and pain and not being and being ignored to me are like danger, because that's what I learned when I was a kid. Because when I experienced them when I was a kid, I think there was a voice in my head that says, this is a dangerous environment for you emotionally. You cannot be present in this environment because you will be in danger. You need to check out. Do whatever you can to survive and check out. And it helped me when I was a kid, but now I do it as an adult. And that's where my mental health gets really, really problematic, and addiction comes in, and depression, and a lot of other things. So I love what you're saying, and you are right. This is the way to feel, to live. And I know that because there's periods in my life when I'm able to experience what you're talking about, and that is the way to be joyful and fulfilled and happy, is to feel your feeling, is to surrender, is to pay attention to yourself, to stay in your own lane, to process everything. My personal instincts are going the other way, and this is why it's been a struggle all my life. Mental health has been always a struggle in my life, because I always have to go against very, very ingrained instincts in me that tells me, no, check out, get out of here, don't feel anything, don't be present. You need to like shut down emotionally, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I love what you're saying. Thank you. That's a great way. When I got sober, what I learned was, meaning, I think like looking at those videos back, I have a very ingrained joyful spirit in me. that was squashed down by, again, mental health and mental illness when I was a kid, and having to deal with everything that happened around me, having emotionally unavailable parents, and having a birth trauma, and and all of that, things that I didn't even was aware of. I started to experiment with feelings when I got sober, because there was more space to feel feelings and not check out. And there was a system. The 12 step did help me. The 12 step, before I went to 12 steps, I didn't even know that I had mental health problems. Can you believe that? I don't know how I survived. Really, I'm a very functional human being, because I don't know how I didn't go, like there were light bulbs going on all the time. So when I got sober, there was space to exploration, and I discovered joy. And I discovered that, like you're saying, the meaning of life is to feel joy. It's like, and it's been something that has definitely been a guiding light for me. I don't do it perfectly, and it's very hard for me to get there, again, because my instinct is to shut down. But I constantly ask myself, like maybe 20 times a day, what makes you happy? What do you want to do? What can make you happy today, or looking forward? What will make you happy? I constantly ask myself that, because my instincts is to not make myself happy. I know it's like I'm in constant, not fight with myself. My Instagram handle says I'm in a complicated relationship with myself, because I am. It's a very complicated relationship. But it's like my whole healing was learning to live against my natural instincts of emotional shutdown, of mental health, of trauma, of mental illness, or whatever it is. I don't know if that makes sense to you, how we're opposite, but I totally saw that. So do you so I'm curious, is there any challenges in your life regarding mental health that are hard for you to deal with, or you pretty much, that's kind of like the way you flow with it, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure. I don't know, Maya. I guess maybe I might ask your opinion on this, because I go back and forth between my thoughts about this. On one hand, I heard Eckhart Tolle, who's like a spiritual guru, say that all humans are walking around in a state of, for lack of a better term, mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
He says, see, if my philosophy is that our natural state of being is one of peace, love, and joy, meaning if I'm not in that state, which of course I'm only human, so I have those moments too, I question what's going on. What am I thinking? What am I embracing? Is there some sort of negative thing going on here? Because my natural state is well-being. So in one hand, you could look at life and say we all struggle with mental illness on some level, whether it be a feeling of depression, a feeling of anxiety, all the way to, someone that has schizophrenia that's living homeless on the street. People could argue that mental illness feeds into things like addictions, etc. And I go back and forth between thinking all humans struggle with some form of mental illness, which is preventing them from feeling their natural state of well-being, to probably a more contemporary view, which is like there are mentally ill people and there are mentally healthy people, and we want to get to be healthy. What are your thoughts? I'm curious. What do you think?
Well, we talked about it a little bit before, and I love Edgar Tolle. He's great. He's amazing. I personally believe that mental health is definitely something we're all dealing with, just like physical health, meaning like we all have our past. We all was born with certain elements mentally and physically. We're all grew up in a certain environment that created mental illness or didn't, or created physical illness or didn't. It's part of being human. Now, I do think that just like physical health, mental, you see, we have to differentiate. I'm learning to differentiate between mental health and mental illness. Mental health, I think, and I'm really happy that it's becoming a more mainstream word, because mental health, it's like physical health. Mental health has such a stigma on that word, mental health, that when I know, for me, I mean, maybe people are different, but my generation or people that are a little bit older, when we hear mental health, we automatically think the most extreme things about mental illness. Oh, mental health means somebody's like suffer from disorder, some kind of disorder, mental disorder. But mental health is just part of being human, just like physical health. We never have stigma about physical health, but it's just part of being human. And I think that it all depends, just like physical health, of what's your how environment and also what you were born into. Some people are born with brain like dysfunctions and stuff like that. Some people are grew up like me, in their mental health was affected by the environment that they grew up on. And some people grew up in a great mental health environment, and they have great coping skill and great mechanisms, and they're very healthy mentally. And as humans, as we go through life, we have times when we have to deal with our physical health, and we'll have time when we have to deal with our mental health. And it's all comes down to what is your pre-existing condition, and what mechanism did you learn, what we gave the example we talked about earlier about somebody who's been in a car accident, okay, for example, or somebody that broke their leg, okay. If they're very healthy and there's nothing wrong with them physically, they probably can heal very fast, and they will have to do maybe a little bit of physiotherapy. And I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I assume it will heal and go back to normal. But somebody who has some kind of diabetes or problem in their physical health will have a harder time to heal that, and it might not completely heal, and there might be complication. Same thing with mental health. If you go through a traumatic event, for example, a car accident or a breakup, okay, a very bad breakup, for example, like you shared before, if you are very mentally healthy, you had great upbringing, you have great coping skill, you know how to deal with it, you can probably, have a difficult period, and it can be very emotional, but it's not going to make you do negative behaviors, and you're not gonna, all of a sudden start doing drugs, I think. And you know what I mean? Like, you will be able to go to this, feel your feelings, grieve, go through whatever it is you need to do, and be very mentally healthy experience. But somebody who's had mental health issues in the past, like emotionally unavailable parents, or some kind of emotional disturbance, or anything to do with that, might deal very badly with those situations, and will definitely have a bad reaction that can actually derail them and take them down a wrong path. I work in treatment centers, and also I read a lot online about like the mental health effect of 2020, and a lot of people, myself included, by the way, that their mental health was stable, and they were sober, and they were okay, got very triggered by 2020 and started doing all behaviors, because when your mechanism is there is not healthiness there in your mental health environment, anything can trigger you to go back to old behaviors. So I don't know if that answers your question, but to me, mental health is just like physical health, and it's really saddened me, and I try to be an advocate for it and put it out there with my work, that it will be treated equally by the systems that we have in our society today, which is not, but also by society and by the meaning we give to it and the judgment we put on it, because I don't think anybody will ever judge anybody from getting sick for getting sick. Like it's just like,
Right.
oh my God, you're such a bad person. I should stay away from you. You have the flu. No, nobody will ever say that. But if somebody suffers from addiction, you go like, oh my God, you're bad for me. I gotta stay away from you. You know what I mean? And of course, it's not that simple, because mental health affects the people that are around you. It's very hard to diagnose. It's very hard to know what's going on. But part of it, and it affects, if somebody suffers from mental illness, it affects their environment. If somebody's sick, they can, isolate physically. It's easier to isolate and not be affected emotionally on other people. So so I'm really a big advocate about mental health and mental illness just being another part of the human experience that we need to deal with, just like physical health.
I think, it is tricky because people can improve their mental health and improve their physical health in a variety of ways. And if you listen to Eckhart Tolle, I'm not going to sound funny when I say this. Things like, what you focus on expands. Things like, these are basic spiritual principles, like what you hold in mind lovingly and gently tends to manifest. And so it's a tricky balance, I think, that each woman must know for herself. But I'll tell you this, a woman who can surrender, go low, feel the feelings, at the risk of looking in the moment, looking ill. If she can do that, and again, be sort of unbothered. I'm not interested in what my boss has to say about this. I'm not interested that my family may be judging me. What's wrong with you? You're having suicidal thoughts. Like, are you now, unworkable? Is this an unworkable situation?
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I find tricky, because from a spiritual perspective, I think that there's a really fine line between sanity and insanity. And I think there's a fine line between going low because you're healing, you're letting it pass, you're letting it release, versus going low and staying there because that's what you're holding in mind. It's a very subtle thing. If you hold in mind all day, if I were to hold in mind all day, I'm sick, I have an eating disorder, I'm not well. I'm not well. If I hold that in mind all day long enough, it could go one of two ways. I could release that and heal and move up, or I could dive myself deeper down a rabbit hole. So I think there's a subtlety to that. But I'll tell you this, moments in my life where it looked like I was not well. It looked as though something is really off here. I don't know if she's going to make it through. When I went through a very severe sort of breakthrough a few years ago. What looked like a disaster to the world was me breaking through all kinds of things. So let me try to say it this way. What looks like a hot mess in the moment are often your major breakthrough moments. Mm-hmm. The reason why people become so unwell, whether that be physically or mentally, in my opinion, is because of repressed, oppressed, suppressed emotions. So for me, I'm not afraid of rock bottoms. I'm not afraid to go down another breakthrough if I had to. I don't anticipate it, but if I had to, excuse me, I'm not afraid that, like, even in moments, if I feel really, really dark, which I too have had suicidal sort of ideations, I think that's the right word. Like, mm-hmm. I knew I would never do it. But in my breakthrough a couple of years ago, when I went broke and felt very hopeless and like a total failure, and I didn't feel I had the support and the love in my life that I needed at that time, I began to fantasize about suicidal thoughts. I knew deep down I was never going to do it. But, and that's for me. I'm not saying for other people. I mean, I've even had suicide in my family, but for me, I knew I was never going to do. No, this is meant to be here. I love myself at least that much. But what looked like a hot mess was me breaking through. I was letting go of old thoughts. I was letting go of old weird codependencies. I was letting go of a victim mindset. I was letting go of years of negative thinking and negative programming. And so I kind of fell apart for a bit, which is kind of natural when you think about it. It's like, things kind of fall apart before they get put back together, but even better and even stronger.
Yeah.
And yeah. So what do you think about that, Maya? Because it's a fine line. Do you know what I mean by it's a fine line?
No, totally. And I'll give you two answers. Okay, one personally and one more from what's the word? Oh my God, sometimes I forget word in English. From an activist, from a mental health activist point of view. So from a personal point of view, again, I would say it again, we are very different. I am very jealous at you, meaning it comes from a very happy place for you, like no animosity whatsoever, that for some reason you were given an amazing coping mechanisms in your, meaning like it's not it's in your, and by the way, correct me if I say anything that you feel is off. This is just my perception of you. Very good coping mechanism to very deep and hard emotional breakdowns and events and stuff like that. Okay, which is great and amazing, and I'm so happy that you're teaching people how to and guiding people and mentoring people on how to do that, because like even as I hear you, it reminds me of what I need to pay attention to, and what works. Because again, opposite than you, my mechanism is exactly the opposite. What's your response? What's your natural response is to feel your feeling. My natural response is to not feel my feelings. So my whole healing journey is basically, if we break it down, it's not simple or easy, but if we break it down very like in simple terms, is how to go against my instincts, how to live my life happily and fully against instincts that tells me not to. So yeah, I completely agree with you. Like, I think that there is nothing on a personal level. I think that's great. You like, it's very inspiring that you talk about it with no judgment, with no shame. I can tell you that for me, breaking down is not allowed, meaning in my belief system, in my nervous system, because breaking down means weakness. It means that no bouncing back, everything has to be held on together tightly and functioning, and like, that's kind of like the environment that I grew up in. And my healing is to allow myself to break down. My healing is kind of like allowing myself to go against my instinct and do what you experience, to let myself break down, and be okay with it, with myself, and maybe share it with a few people and show them my vulnerability, and all of that. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I think it's great. I think you're absolutely right. This is like what healthy mental health looks like.
It can look messy, and this is why I know the older I get, the more I see that how important it is to be unbothered. Like, just even talking, I was telling Maya this, like, I had an ex that tried to convince me I was mentally ill in order to keep me. I went to a therapist after saying, I think I'm mentally ill. Something's wrong with me. And, I'm telling her all stuff. So she's evaluating me. And she goes, Jenny, he was abusing you. he was abusing you. You just came out of a verbally, psychologically, mentally abusive relationship, and he was trying to convince you you're mentally ill to keep you. So this is, see, again, this is this fine line, because sometimes the world is convincing us we're sick and we're not well. Well, again, what you hold in mind for a long time will manifest. And so now you think you have some sort of crazy, depression that you can't get rid of, or, something's wrong with you. You think you're bipolar, when really you were just going through a hard year. Like, who wouldn't be a mess after, for example, let's say a family member dies, or maybe even an animal that you really, really love that was like your child. Like, it would be a normal response to be a hot mess, crying all the time, and totally upset for as long as need be, until that was grieved and released and let go of. Now, meanwhile, if you have abusive friends or you're in an abusive relationship, they're going to be like, what's wrong with you? Get it together. Like, you got to work. Like, you can't keep crying over this stupid dog or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, I'm really I've learned, like, being unbothered. Like, if I feel that I need some sort of, help from a therapist or something for my mental health, then I will go ahead and get that. However, you are not necessarily a hot mess or mentally ill or have something wrong with you because you're going through a really hard year. Or maybe you're 42, you're single, and your whole life dream was to be married with a family. Of course you're going to be depressed. Who wouldn't be? Who wouldn't be upset for a whole year and have to cry that out and then come to terms with it? Because in life, we have to come to terms with everything in our 3D reality. Because, well, I won't get into it. That's for a different topic. But I believe we create our reality through our thoughts. I have a different, more spiritual belief.
I believe that. I believe that too.
You do? I do. I believe we create our reality. So if we take a step back, it's like, okay, well, if I believe that, and I believe that in due time, my thoughts are going to create changes, excuse me, in what's going on in my 3D. It gives you a lot of reason to go into the closet with the monster called your feelings, to go into the closet with the breakdown moment, we'll call it the bad year, the horrible situation, and feel it. Sit with the cobra in the closet. And what you're going to find over time is, as the lights come on again slowly, and by the way, being released from these emotions happens organically. You don't have to try. You just have to feel them. You turn on the lights and it's a little fake little snake that's been in there.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think I might hire you to be my mentor. I love it because you know why? Because I cannot do that. You would not believe the amount of mental work I have to do to get to that place. Now, that's not really even true. It's not.
Why, Maya? What are you afraid of?
Okay, so it's not measured by time. It's not like I have to go to hours and hours. It's an energy thing. Okay. Okay, so like and this is like addiction 101. Okay. And maybe you're not an addict, Jennylyn. I'm sorry to tell you that, but I don't think you're an addict.
No. I thought I was addicted to food because everyone told me I was addicted to food. I wasn't addicted to food. I'm just a natural curvy girl.
Yeah. No, let me tell you.
It's a fine line. You have to be careful because people will diagnose you to keep you down.
Yeah. No, that's true. And I'm sorry you went through that because that's horrible. But that's like the same, you've seen there's a stream of movies coming in the past 2 years of mothers who convince their kids they're sick to keep them to keep control of them. So it's the same thing. It's kind of like using illness to control somebody. But why can I do that? Because first of all, I am a food addict, and food is a coping mechanism that I use not to feel my feelings. Okay. Which is tricky because we need food, but it's I'm an addict, period. I just use food, and addiction is addiction. But why can I not do what you're saying? Because the way my emotional system is, and the way like my nervous system is and my mind is when a feeling comes up, when a difficult feeling comes up, all feelings are great. All feelings should be felt. It's not that they shouldn't be felt, but when you experience, like, you know, a breakdown, you know, I didn't get what I wanted, I'm sad about it, I'm depressed, I literally shut down. And what I need to do, like, that's like that, what it goes. It's like a switch, boom. You know, there's nothing I can do about it. It's just a natural reaction. Sobriety is at that moment taking counter reaction to not shut down, calling somebody, going to a trust meeting, going to a walk, being of service to somebody, doing anything to get you out of that state that you're in, and then having, in some miracle, a space to process that feeling sober, which is very hard to do when you're an addict. So you see, it's kind of like, and again, that's why I'm saying I'm very like, I'm very happy for you. Like, I mean, I think that's amazing, and I think that it's amazing that you are reminding people that this is how, this is the way, like, this is, you're right, you're absolutely right, this is how it's the best way to enjoy life, to be fulfilled, to create a beautiful life, to, you know, exactly what you're talking about, the surrendering, the just like feeling your feeling. This is exactly on my in my podcast where I talk to the feelings. That is a lot of time there, most of the time that's their point of view. It's like, we're not the enemy, you know, because we're human, and a lot of people with mental health issues make feelings and emotions and their parts the enemy, you know. um, so um, yeah, I can't do it instinctively like you. I need to have a system around me, which is what 12 step and addiction and sobriety. I need to have a system around me to help me get to that place that you're talking about. You know, I need to do work to get to that place that you're talking about. And but I absolutely agree with you and believe that that is the place I'm trying to get to. You know what I mean? I'm not disagreeing with you at all about that. And I think that part of, yeah, from an active, again, mental health activism point of view, and you said it a little bit too, it's like you get judged by your friend from feeling sad for losing a pet, but if you break your leg, they will be the first there to help you. Nobody would judge you for breaking your leg. They will be the first one there to buy you food. Now it's changing. I mean, if you have a friend that this is my opinion, if you have a friend that thinks you're an idiot for crying over your pet, maybe they shouldn't be your friends, but you know, to each his own. But it's more, it's much better now than when it was when you and I were younger, but it's still there where you can have a sick day, but you can have a mental health day.
Right.
You again, you break your leg, you can have the 2 weeks off to you know, to recover, but your pet dies, you can take 2 days off legally to you know, to grieve that. Now it's, again, there's a lot of companies who do, and I'm not saying this is like black and white, but is a society at all. And also, if you notice, like, and again, this is my activism part, mental health is not integrated into our society, in the education system, in the entertainment, in the and again, this is not black and white, there are stuff, but I'm talking about more as a whole. Like, physical health is integrated into our systems as society. And I think that if we start very young, and this is why it's so amazing that there are teachers who do meditations now with their kids, and there are a lot of organizations who brings mental health um, awareness to schools and to parents. But imagine like if in society we dealt with mental health as we deal with physical health from zero, from age zero. I mean, we will have a completely different society. That's what I believe, and this is what my work is about. I bring it creatively more. You know, I try to integrate mental healthness in a creative way, just because I think sometimes, a lot of time, it's easier for people because it's such a loaded topic, and because we're not a society that deals with it, people go like, no, 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 no. So I try to bring it in a more creative way to bring attention to it. But yeah, I completely agree with you. You found a formula, Jennylyn. I think you should trademark it and and sell it in bottles, because I'm going to be a subscriber. I'm going to buy one every day.
Maya, thank you, Maya. You're so sweet. I had a client that called me. This was a couple years ago, and I rarely take men. Love men. Men make the world go round, but I typically work with women, and that's where my heart is in my work. But I took a male client because he was really creative. He was an artist. He was amazing, and I was like, oh my God, this guy's a star. So I take him, and he calls me. We're video chatting, and he's just struggling with depression. He's, he doesn't feel motivated. He's stressed out because he's a guy and he wants to make money so he can eventually have a family. And here he is. He was a handsome and very, very creative and really smart guy. So I was so blunt with him. I go, sweetheart, the reason why you're in therapy, the reason why you're depressed, the reason why you have low self-esteem and you're an anxious mess is because you're doing nothing in life that you like. You have a job you hate. You live in a situation that sucks. You're not pursuing your art, which is what he was really gifted in. You're not pursuing your passions. That's why you're upset. Like, if you want to cure this all in 1 month, and you can go back to your therapist for as long as you want, fabulous. Therapy never worked for me, because for me, therapy was like, it helped in some ways. Like, I did process one of my animals that passed away that I was really upset about, and a few things. It's definitely been helpful on some levels, but for me, ultimately, therapy was a lot of like venting and expressing, which is fine. But it didn't get to the core root of the problem with most of my clients, which is the reason why you're a hot, miserable, depressed, suicidal mess is because your life does suck. Your life sucks. You're not doing anything you want to do. Like, you're this beautiful dancer and you're stuck in this corporate 9-to-5 job where you're being treated like a slave and a nobody. Well, who wouldn't want to blow their brains out after 5 years of that?
What did he say? I'm so curious if you can share. What did he say to it? What was his response?
You know what? We worked together for a really short time, and his response, he believed me. And I never did keep in touch with him, which is unusual. I do typically kind of keep in touch a little bit with clients throughout the years. Well, old voice students will always call me just to say, hey, I love you, I miss you, whatever. But in the time, I couldn't have been more blunt. So, for example, people will say to me, Jenny, how is it that you live your life generally in a state of well-being? And that's, I can't sugarcoat it. I'm almost always happy. After you had your father commit suicide, you had this childhood of trauma and depression, you had an eating disorder for however many years, like you've been a quote unquote struggling artist for most of your life, you went through a divorce. How is this possible? Well, this is possible because I do things I like. I have a business I like. I dress the way I like. If you don't like it, I don't care. I date who I want to date. I don't date dusties. I date guys that are successful, good looking, treat me like a queen, or else I'm out of there. What do I have to complain about? So I'm not miserable being single, because why would I be miserable? I'm being wined and dined and treated like a queen. And eventually I'm going to meet my soulmate and I'm going to go, you and I, perfect. We're going to get married. Fabulous. Yeah. Okay. So that hasn't happened for me yet, but that doesn't mean I'm miserable in my singleness, because I don't date dusties. I don't date dudes that treat me bad. I don't take clients that are disrespectful. It's like, if a client doesn't see my value, this isn't for you. This is why, in order to work with me as a singing teacher, you have to audition. Show me why I should work with you, Bill. So this is what I'm saying. So you can go through a lifetime of traumas, and by the way, you can have a really wonderful childhood and still be struggling with this constant state of anxiety, melancholiness, and worthlessness.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is, half of the problem, yes, is in the mind, and things like that you have to work on, going into the closet with the cobra. But the other half of it is that your life sucks. you need to start having a good life, which requires risk. So we can talk about that too. Like, I could die tomorrow, Maya. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you could get pregnant and like your husband dies in 5 years and you're on your own. Like, risk is everywhere. We could get bombed tomorrow. Aliens could invade. So at the end of the day, the problem is people are freaking pansies. They're not, balling up to their dreams. Live your dreams. Date who you want to date. Don't marry below your league. Like, marry the guy that blows you away or the girl that blows you away. Like, these are my remedies. And I think the reason why it can be hard for people to digest my remedies is because everything I'm talking about, the bottom line is you got to have balls and you got to have guts. And if you don't, you become lame. Think of the word. You become lame in your life. You're lame emotionally. You're lame mentally. You're lame in your relationships. You're so freaking boring in business. Like, I can't even stay awake during this business meeting. Why do we become lame and lifeless and depressed and anxious and can't do? Because we're not living the life we were meant to live. And that requires an element of faith. There's an element of faith that it takes for Maya and I to get out here and create this podcast. There's a lot of negative repercussions that can come from sharing the wrong opinion these days, God forbid, or maybe saying something out of turn, or sharing a family experience that could hurt. There's a lot of risk involved, but there's a lot of joy from it. So those are my thoughts too. That's me being really to the punch and blunt.
No, that's amazing. So you are, and I'll explain what I mean by that. You are a trigger bomb for some people. Yeah. And I mean it in a good way, not in a bad way. So imagine, like, this is hard to do visually. This is why I do it in a podcast form. But imagine I step out of the way. Maya, the adult that is like, talking to you and enjoying this amazing conversation, step out. And my survival, my worthlessness, my low self-esteem, and my trauma are here right now, going like, F you, Jennylyn, F you. Does that make sense? Meaning, like, as you're saying it, I can hear them going like, oh, no, 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 no. If you do it, me, meaning they're talking to me, if you do it, it's impossible. It's never going to happen. You're going to be homeless. I can literally feel like, even as you're speaking, I can feel it in my nervous system, because it's like you trigger like trauma in me, and this is what I said, like, I react differently to those things, and then I have to work through them. But you're absolutely right. It's just that people who were, learned that, they're worthless, they're nothing, they have nothing to offer, I don't know, their failures, cannot do it, because it brings up this reaction to what you just said. It's like a triggering, like, reaction. No, I cannot do it. Does that make sense? But I again love everything you said. I think you're absolutely right, and this has been my life struggle, between survival and joy, between fulfillment and survival, because I'm built for survival because of my birth trauma. From minute one, I had to survive. Okay, even though I didn't, but my systems thought I needed to survive. So I'm wired for survival. And when you come and tell me to thrive, I go like, danger, danger, danger. And I know that it's so unlogical. I had to really, really like understand the tremendous unlogical of that, because who doesn't want to thrive? It's the most safe thing in the world to thrive. It's great, it's amazing. But when you're wired for opposite than that, it's a mess. It's going against everything that you kind of like, going against everything that I that I can do, that I can function. So this has been really cool. Like, I really did not know those things about you. So it's really cool to see the two different sides of the same coin, of the coin of joy, the coin of mental health, and I really enjoy, and I can see why a lot of people hire you as their mentor. I mean, again, I want to hire you as my mentor. You have a lot of wisdom. It's kind of like we can like double team, which is you preach in a good way, trigger them, and then send them my way, and I help them with getting over their triggers and moving to that place that you were talking about. That's what I do. I work a lot with blocks and with people exactly like that, exactly what you said. I work a lot with writers just because that's the niche I kind of fell into in LA, but a block is a block is a block. And I literally get people to break through their block. What they say, we came here to teach what we need to learn the most. And I worked with hundreds of people, and it all comes down, it's the same thing. It's like some kind of argument and thing that's going on inside of them, and it's always something about their childhood that stops them from exactly what you said. They're like, I want to do this, but I can't. I don't take any action. I cannot bring myself to do that. But I don't know why. This is like, I don't know if you experience that in your mentoring, if people say that to you, and then what do you say to them, and then how do they work through it?
Well, I have two things that I say. If you're building your faith, and a thriving life, mentally and physically, requires faith. To start it with just baby steps towards joy, baby steps away from misery. It might be a friend you need to cut. It might be a crazy aunt that needs to go. It might be, instead of working 60 hours a week, pull it down to 40 and just deal with the financial loss. So baby steps towards joy.
Which is, just let me comment on that, just so I won't forget. That's great. This is exactly how I learned how to deal with deregulating trauma.
Baby step, right?
It's like you have to regulate your nervous system to the new reality. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes. And guess what, Maya? You got to regulate your nervous system for joy too, because most people have a nervous system that's regulated towards misery.
Absolutely.
In fact, you could put them in Disneyland, they'll find a way.
Yeah.
Because their nervous system, their vibration, or you could say your vibe, is one of misery, struggle life. Everything's freaking hard. So, you have to rewire it all. This is why I'm all a fan of breakdowns. But the second thing, because you rewire in breakdowns, I was not this woman 5 years ago. I was a big old victim. I thought, I didn't understand I was creating my reality. I had no clue about how to I had grown up a Christian, but like when, the chips were down, I didn't know how to have faith in God. So, all of this came from my breakdown breakthrough. Now, the other thing I recommend that people do, because I have a method of going low to get high. When you get humble, you get exalted. When you go down into the depths, you rise up into joy. When it's a weird thing that the universe likes to balance itself out. And I just find that very healing. So here's what I tell people. Let's walk through the worst case scenario. So for example, and we make peace with it. We make peace with the absolute worst case scenario. So for example, excuse me, wonderful man, and he was just a wonderful person, but we were not soulmates. And I knew that if I stayed in this marriage, I would not be happy. And that I was young enough to make the leap, which was, you don't totally know this about me, Maya, but most of the people in my life that I love are deeply religious, devout, kind of right-wing people, which I love them and I respect them deeply. And I have a lot of them on my podcast. So I'm not judging that. But you can imagine at the time going through a divorce, the kind of flack that I got. And it was kind of like the Meghan Markle, Prince Harry scenario, because my ex-husband at the time was an ordained pastor. Nightmare. right? So I had to think through in that scenario, what is the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario, my family turns on me. People gossip about me and destroy my reputation, just demolish everything I've ever, tried to be. Worst case scenario, he cuts me off financially and I have no income and I literally go broke, maybe homeless. I had to walk through all of that and look it right in the eye and then face it and ask myself, is joy, which I know is always on the other side of a leap. This is why most people don't have joy. You never leap. Effing leap, and you'll see where the joy is. It's on the other side. So, there's a little voice in me that's like, you know what? If I make the right decision for myself, maybe one day I could really have the fairy tale marriage. I could really have it all, having learned from this experience. So I gave it all up. And half of those things came true and the other half didn't. And, we're still friends to this day and I have nothing but love and respect for him. And it was the right decision for both of us. And then he went off and became a medical doctor and makes a ton of money. And I tell him all the time, you could get a supermodel now. You could upgrade, get someone who's 25, half my size, and, whatever, twice my IQ. So, he's set up for life too. And so it was something, and you have to walk through that. Like when it comes to your career and things like that, the fear of being broke and falling in a ditch. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you go broke and you fall in a ditch. Like, do you think you could survive that? And if a person's like, absolutely not, then I'll be like, okay, just keep taking your baby steps towards joy, baby steps away from misery. And you'll have, a decent amount of happiness. But if someone's like, Jenny, I want it all. I want it all. I want the dream marriage. I want the Lexus. I want the dream career. I want to make money in my sleep, girl. I want people paying me hundreds of dollars just to speak to me, thousands. I wanted this, I wanted that. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, you got to face all worst case scenarios, make peace with them. Maybe half of them will come about and half of them won't. If you really have a positive mindset, most of the negatives won't. I've gotten to a point now, I'm so good at this that usually all my best case scenarios unfold and everything's fabulous. But that wasn't always like that. When I was first learning to have faith in God, again, we all talk a big effing game, but when the chips are down, do you trust God or not? Mm-hmm. Do you believe the Bible verse that says God is within her? She will not fail. She will not fail. So, that's from the Psalms. Like, do you believe it or do you not? And so, you build your faith. And now I'm 40. I've been through hell and back. I've been broke and I've made a ton of money in one day. Like, it's just, I've done it all. I've, put up YouTube videos that had no views and I have YouTube videos that have 5 million views. So it's like, I've been through so many things that my faith is a lot stronger. And I think to myself, what if I took another risk and ended up in a ditch again? Because I ended up in a ditch once in my life, 40 years. I ended up in a ditch for a couple weeks. It was fine. But I thought to myself, what if I end up in a ditch again? I'm like, I guess I end up in a ditch again. Like, I'll figure it out, but I doubt I will because, again, your faith gets stronger. You get smarter about how to take those leaps. You get the limiting thoughts out and all the negativity that's, you can learn how to let that go. But that takes time. You're not just going to be like Mother Teresa level faith, like overnight. So you have to know what you're ready for. But if you want it all, you got to get ready to risk it all. You don't get it all without risking it all. Yeah,
that's awesome. I love it. Let's end on that. I just love it. That's perfect. Okay. There's nothing to say. No comment. Okay. No, I love it. I think that's exactly right. And this is exactly, I am training my nervous system to be okay to risk it, because my nervous system thinks that risking it is dying. And that's why I stop myself from going after a lot of dreams and doing a lot of things. And it took me, that's why I said in the past 2 years, I started working on trauma, because I realized that it was literally fight, flight, freeze response. I just couldn't, it's kind of like asking somebody to run in a dark alley towards somebody with a knife, that's how pursuing my dreams was. And again, I know it sounds insane, but that's like the nervous system when you have a lot of trauma. So I'm training myself, which is why I'm growing my business and doing all of those things, and making, you know, different choices and decisions and taking chances, risk, you know, calculated chances. I don't want to rattle my nervous system, but yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, you'll get there that way too.
Yeah.
It might be slower, you know,
It is
like
slower.
it's a slower process, but I've also learned that some women really like a slow process. What the hell's the rush?
Yeah.
Where are you going? Like, what's the rush? Like, so who cares if it takes you an extra 5 years to build the kind of thriving business, say, that you deserve and you can dream of and you can think of? Who cares? It's fine. Like,
as long as I'm not miserable. Failure for me is being miserable.
Yeah.
Feeling miserable. Like it's always about feeling joy. So it's slow, but if every day and every step is about feeling joy, that's what's important to me.
Yeah, the more you embrace the failure, the less you'll fail. What you resist persists. So if you are thinking, I can't fail, there's the failure right there. I can't go there. You're more likely to manifest it, because what you hold in mind tends to manifest. So how to get rid of that dragon called failure related to X, Y, or Z? You just focus on it. You sit with it. You run it through and cry your eyeballs out for days and make peace with it. It will lift up out of your vibration naturally. You won't have to try. It'll just release. You'll just feel released. And then you can just keep going, and it won't manifest. It manifests when you focus on it, which is why people have to go into the closet. You got to go low to get high.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. You know, yeah, because it's true. Like, your thoughts do create, but what's hard is when you're resisting, it's the number one thing on your.
Yeah, when you don't believe it. To me, it's like what stops me from manifesting is not believing in myself, in it happening, in whatever it is.
Yes. And that muscle will get stronger as more successes come, and as you're able to cope with, you know, the down moments better and better and better.
You know that I wasn't able to do interviews on video like this.
Right.
That's like being seen, because I was raised by a narcissistic tendencies mom. Being seen is like danger, and I stopped myself. I'm like, nope, not doing video interviews. And this is part of, like, thank you for asking. This is part of, like, you know, moving forward.
See, this is what I'm saying, is you're doing everything right. You're probably just being a little hard on yourself, like not fully embracing how much risk you are taking, how many, you know, there are these mini leaps that you're taking, and there's always joy on the other side of a leap. So, you know, again, and every woman is going to have her own personality and way of building her dream life. For many of my clients, just the baby step method works great. But I have clients that if they don't, for example, get out of the situation they're in, which would require a big risk and leap, they're not going to make it. Meaning, like, mentally, they would have, it would just be so miserable for so long, and the price is just so high. So you have to know yourself, and you have to know the circumstance. And I also often tell people the big giant leaps in life aren't all that often. You know, more usually it's more the baby step stuff. But every now and then you know, you could get offered a certain type of business deal, Maya, let's say over the next year, that requires a big leap. And you could get offered a book deal for $100 grand that would require huge leaps. Like, it'll come to you when it comes to you, kind of organically. But yes, you have to retrain your wire. People have got to start remembering you can retrain your nervous system for anything, including bliss.
Yeah, and if you don't know how to do. Yes, and if you don't know how to do it, or you're not sure, go to Jennylyn for coaching and mentoring. Go to a therapist. There's a lot of trauma therapists who will help you with that. I did not know how to do it. I had to go to a somatic therapist, and I had to learn what does it mean and how to train myself, because it does take you need guidance. That's what I found. With retraining a lot of things. That's why you go to therapy, you retrain your your brain wires. Same thing with the nervous system. It's the brain and the nervous system are, to me, two separate, it's like two separate systems. everything is connected, but they're two separate systems. I can talk myself out of any negative thought to positive, but getting myself out of a freeze, like nervous system freeze mode, is a totally different process.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, we're all in our journey, guys, and this is just how we're doing it. You know, Maya and I are processing things differently, and we learn from each other, and you know, you have to find what works for you. But I'll tell you this, our human state is well-being. I know that for sure. That I know for sure. And how a woman gets there is her own unique path. But you are not made to be miserable. You were not made to be in chains. Like, your life was not made to live in those low vibrations. That's not what you came here for. So I can tell you that much. But how you go about it is unique. And you know, I know Maya people that don't believe in doing any deep work. They just go straight for the positive thinking. I've seen that work for people too. It doesn't work for me. I got to go low to get high.
Yeah. Again, it's the same as physical health. I've never been sick in my life. Knock on wood. I've never been sick in my life. I've never been in a hospital. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not, and there's people who get, you know, sick every other week, but I have to go through a lot to make any progress with mental health. And some people, I know them, you know, to some extent are different than me, but there's some people who are just fine. They don't suffer from depression. They have lows, like, you know, they can function mentally very, very well. That's not me. That's something I had to grieve, you know. I'm like, that is not me. I have to wake up in the morning and do some things in order to be mentally prepared, you know, mental health prepared for the day. But I don't have to do anything physical, so that's good. like some people.
We all have our gifts.
Yeah.
We all have those things that give us a little advantage in life, and we should definitely be grateful for them. And I guess the rest of them, you kind of just work on improving them, and you know. So anyway, guys, this has been amazing. I guess we could just leave them with where to contact us one more time. For me, guys, it's at jennylynchung.com, and for Maya,
it's just mayakiva.com, and my podcast is Interview with Myself. And my feelings, did you know that, Jennylyn? My feelings have an Instagram account, and they have a lot to say.
I know, I think I followed it.
So if you want to follow my feelings, it's at Maya Kiva Feelings.
Yay! Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Bye. Thanks.